You know something, guys? Whenever I say that an episode from the earlier seasons have aged poorly due to the following seasons, it's mainly thinking about the characters and how they get derailments, and the fact that most of the accomplishments that they did in previous seasons mean nothing. And when it comes to the waiting game from the Loud House, while comparing it to the Casagrandes episode, Find Those Weepos, most aspects of that episode work, while some not so much. And believe me when I say this, when an episode from the Loud House came out in 2016, and you remember that episode the most out of anything that happened when the characters returned after that episode, believe me, my perspective towards the Loud House just changes a lot whenever I look at these episodes closely. Because as much as I understand that these characters, mainly Lincoln, Ryan, and Sid, are kids at the end of the day, and they didn't forget about the lesson involving using people for money in some sort, even if it may be in a different way, I still felt like that even to this day, these characters don't even feel like that these lessons really mean much to them, knowing full well that in the later seasons, the flammalization and the down-to-earth elements is just becoming less and less important. Like, I understand making newer ideas in later seasons is really important, but at the same time, there's literally no reason to make these derailments. In the waiting game, Lincoln desperately wants to get an invitation from Chandler since that he's giving out invitations. So in order to get an invitation from Chandler, he wants to get some beverages and foods from Gus's Games and Grub. Lincoln goes to Lori, who he gave her a job at, giving him free stuff, but this goes way overboard. In Find Those Weepos, Ryan and Sid found a lost wallet with $100 in. So they go to different apartments, but they don't own that wallet. After placing up posters for someone to reclaim their wallet, Ryan and Sid get distracted by multiple stores, which they used up all of the money, which was honestly a lot more stupid compared to Lincoln's part, and Lincoln was intentionally being selfish, even though they didn't mean to put Lori in the position that she doesn't deserve. If you couldn't tell, these two episodes are focusing on money, while the Loud House is where Lincoln uses Lori for his advantage, just how Chandler is losing Lincoln for his advantage, while in the Casagrandes episode are dumbed down for the sake of this plot to work. Like, I can understand Sid, but Ryan, not so much. Believe me, even if you may like this episode or not, I can still understand that they could have made this episode much more better if other characters take the spotlight. But considering that in the later seasons where Ryan gets less screen time, I'm pretty sure that that argument would be favored the other way around for Ryan's case when it comes to the later seasons. But for this episode, not so much. Now, what I stated about Lincoln putting Lori in the position that she doesn't deserve, this is one of the only occasions where I'm not siding with Lincoln, considering that he is using Lori in the same ways as Chandler is using him. And granted, I understand that this is the first episode where Chandler actually debuts, but in comparison of how he's portrayed in the later seasons, it's really confusing onto how he's still in the position where he is able to afford so much stuff. Because in this episode, he wasn't bullying Lincoln around, and the fact that he's only using them for the sake of getting free stuff at Gus's Games and Grump, it's honestly enough to showcase on why we should go against this character. Because believe me, the amount of antagonists that this show has is either doing stuff to make the characters miserable without an actual motivation. I'm pretty sure that Chandler would have done a lot more than rather than just bullying Lincoln in the later seasons. Because as far as I'm concerned, the fact that he's only doing this to get free stuff is enough to make him somewhat of an antagonist that doesn't have the same traits as the other antagonists in this show. And since that Lori is really likable in this episode, considering that in season 1 she is selfish, it really shows that this is the beginning of Lori and Lincoln's relationship together. Because as far as I'm concerned, in comparison of the other characters that I've seen involving the Loud Sisters, the Lincoln's relationship with Lori felt like the most developed and the most remained development that had no derailments. Granted, I can't agree on the fact that Lori is still in a position to handicap Lincoln with the other Loud Sisters, mainly Cancer the Con, but at the same time, since that she didn't do anything wrong and the fact that she's being manipulated, well, not really manipulated, but being used by Lincoln, is enough to see that she's definitely in the right 100%. Which is honestly a shame that this is one of the only episodes where Lincoln is the bad guy while Lori is the good guy, or good girl, or good sister in this case. In comparison of the Casagrandes Finals Weepers, well, Maybelle is the owner of the Lost Wallet. I'm gonna be really honest with you, I find it difficult to believe that the lesson in this episode is really towards Ryan, because at the same time I thought that she was gonna be a lot more smarter than that. Like, if this episode was focusing on Sid, it would make sense, but considering that Ryan is so obsessed with 12 is Midnight, along with the fact that she used the money off of other things, I'm gonna be real with you, if she was willing to pay off the money that she used, I would probably believe that, and if it only stopped at the pizza restaurant. But the fact that Ryan just went to a different location just to use that money, then I'm finding it difficult to believe that Ryan is in the same scenario as Lincoln while she can't be able to get as much money as the other characters. You know, I can understand Lincoln having a difficult time to get more money while his sisters do much more better, but in this, I find it difficult to believe. Like, if you really want me to believe that Ryan is better than Lincoln, then at the same time, don't make her a female version of Lincoln, because as far as I'm concerned, I know that you could have done a lot more better with Ryan's character, considering that she's supposed to be different in comparison to Lincoln. The fact that Ryan thinks that no one will be able to find the purse is one thing, but at the same time selfish to think about. Like, if she would have just leave it in the Lost and Found in the Mikado until someone comes in, then maybe she wouldn't be in this position. I'm gonna be really honest with you, whenever I say it's one thing when it comes to Ryan's defense, in comparison of Lincoln's defense, he wants to go to a sewage plant, which is where Chandler is taking the people he's been giving out invitations to. It's stupid, but considering this is Season 1, they didn't know how to flesh out Lincoln's character completely. And believe me, even if it may be a stupid excuse for Lincoln to go to a sewage plant in order to use Lori, at the same time, this is part of Season 1, and if this happened in the later seasons, mainly Seasons 2 or 3, it will probably be out of character for Lincoln to do. Like, it may be a weak defense on Lincoln's part, but at the same time, when we get an episode involving Ryan using money basically on anything, which may be better than what Lincoln is doing. When it comes to pizza, clowns, a penguin movie, and Yun Kwan or 12 is Midnight equipment, it's better than a sewage plant. But at the same time, the fact that Wang Yan just isn't smart enough just makes this difficult for me to find any understanding of Wang Yan's character. And the fact that this is one of the first episodes from the Casagrandes spin-off, I find it difficult to believe that Wang Yan would still do any of that kind of stuff. Like, she may pick the right places in comparison to Lincoln picking a sewage plant over Loe's chance to go to the dance. It really feels like Maybelle, who did nothing wrong in this episode, who is the rightful owner of the wallet, is so we can see her apartment. And in the fact that Ryan and Sid are doing the same thing as what Lincoln is doing after realizing that Loe is working the night shift in order to make up the free stuff that she gave to him. And yes, I'm fully aware that Maybelle was part of a band that is going to be established in season 2, and I was planning on comparing it to a Loud House episode, but after reconsidering, it's gonna be difficult to talk about that episode and just see what Maybelle's life is like, since that the Casagrandes is doing a lot of representation involving people from different cultures and stuff. Granted, I'm not sure if you guys are interested into seeing a comparison video, but at the same time, I like to talk about a lot of characters from the Casagrandes, mainly the fact that people have been looking into the negatives a little bit more in comparison to what the qualities the Casagrandes can offer, even if they're minimum. Getting back to the waiting game, since the down-to-earth elements are in place in this episode, I really feel sympathy towards Loe, since that we're supposed to take her life seriously just as much as Lincoln's. And I understand that I did discuss about Loe and Lincoln's relationship being well developed, but at the same time, when it comes to the later seasons where Loe is only being used less, and it's only if her sisters were part of it, I'm gonna be really honest with you. The problem that I have with this scene alone is mainly the fact that we don't take Loe's life seriously in the later seasons, while in the earlier seasons, we need to. Like, in this episode, well, she doesn't really put her foot down, and she's only doing this just to be nice towards Lincoln, while Lincoln is being selfish towards Loe. I can instantly tell that her life is important, which made me sympathize her. But in the later seasons, when it comes to how she's portrayed along with the characters all around her, it really feels like that the people working on the show right now can't be able to have a balance of characters being nice, while also making the characters smarter. When I get the chance to talk about the Loud House in further detail, just like in my Lincoln Loud video, there's a lot to discuss, not just involving Loe's character, but basically everything that is wrong with the modern seasons of the Loud House, that even if I may discuss about the aspects of them in these videos, believe me, even if it's going to take a while for me to finally make that video, it's gonna be in the same fashion like my Lincoln Loud video that I published last year. Believe me, I understand that you may not like longer videos, but at the same time, whenever I make longer videos, I'm always serious. I guess the only thing that is worth discussing is that there's a subplot in the Casagrandes where Bobby found so many lost items in the Lost and Found box that if he puts all of them on, someone may recognize the stuff that they lost. There's nothing else I can say other than the fact that this is pretty much there just to fill up the 11-minute runtime. And not to say that this is a bad subplot, but considering that the main plot of this is less entertaining in comparison to the subplot, you know the waiting game is the superior episode to over Find Those Weepers. And the fact that the ending of the waiting game is way more better in comparison to Finals Weepos is really saying something. Like, I know my critiques of the elements may be over my head, but I can't overlook the relationship of Lincoln and Lori in this. As far as I'm concerned, if we just look into this episode as its own thing and just ignore everything else afterwards, then this episode will probably recapture your memories of this show, even though it's difficult to do so. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's difficult for me to recapture my memories of watching cartoons only to have different opinions later on. So if there's one thing I'm going to bring up before wrapping up this video is that I'm going to be talking about Chandler a lot in these videos in future projects. So keep in mind, the worst has yet to come. And I'm saying that because, aside from one episode, well, he becomes friends with Lincoln, even though it's not really the case, those episodes make this episode's version of Chandler really forgettable, which really sums up a lot onto how people really hated Chandler in this episode a lot more than how they felt in 2016. I'm giving the waiting game an 8 out of 10, while Finders Weepos gets a 5 out of 10.